So again, you were pardoned. You didn't ask for a pardon. It was preemptive just in case Trump's Justice Department goes after you and other members of the January 6th committee. What was your reaction when you saw Trump's post last night declaring your preemptive pardon void and vacant?
Well, first off, I'm trying to figure out what he's trying to distract from, because that's what all this is, always a distraction to try to get people's attention, or maybe he hasn't felt like he's got enough attention. But look, Jake, it's like, bring it on. Like, honestly, so, we had an election. I fought against Donald Trump. I wanted Kamala Harris to win. January 6th was a big thing, but America made a different choice. Fine, I'm ready to move on. I'm like, look, we made it very clear what happened on January 6th. America made a decision. There is one person that's obsessed about the 6th because he still has been basically deemed guilty in the court of public opinion, and that's Donald Trump, and he can't handle it. He obsesses about it. So my reaction to him is like, you know what? Then bring it. Like, stop talking about it. Stop being all verbose. Stop pretending like you're tough. Bring the charges then if you really want to do it, because we will crush you in court, and it'll make me 3 times more effective against you. Look, honestly, Jake, I'm ready to move on too. But if he wants to keep bringing it up, bring it up or be quiet. That's how I feel.
Highly critical of what they call the Trump administration's lawlessness, the publisher and editor of The Bulwark, Sarah Longwell and Jonathan V. Last. Thank you, both of you, for being here. And to our viewers who don't know, and I'm sure there are none of them who don't, you are both, I would say, never Trump Republicans. I don't even know if that's still a thing, but let's just leave it there. Sarah, you both have been talking about the lawlessness, and I want, Sarah, you to look at, and I'm sure you saw it at the time, Stephen Miller put up the following tweet, which I think was prescient for this week. Under the precedents now being established by radical rogue judges, a district court in Hawaii could enjoin troop movements in Iraq. Judges have no authority to administer the executive branch or nullify the results of a national election. We either have a democracy or we do not. How do you think that plays into what we are seeing, just, on a number of issues, but just the disregarding of judges' orders, not just on immigration, but on other aspects of what is happening right now?
Look, I think for a lot of us who were really concerned and alarmed by a Trump second term, one of the things that we thought may very well happen is that Trump was going to set himself up to deny court orders or just ignore them. The courts have become, in this moment, one of the last refuges of sort of being able to hold Trump either accountable or stop some of the things he's doing. He is going so fast to try to dismantle the government or implement his deportation policies that he's showing a lot of disregard for the law. And so the judges, whether they're, setting up injunctions or trying to slow him down, temporary restraining orders, like, there's going to come a point, we always thought, where Trump might just say, I'm going to start ignoring these court orders. And one of the things that he's doing is trying to pick the most unsympathetic people to do this, right? People that a lot of people are going to be like, I don't care about deporting gang members. These are bad people. Now, we don't know exactly, we're not sure that they're gang members. We're just taking their word for it. But they do seem to be hitting the point now where they're trying to get by on a technicality, but it looks like they are starting to be at the point where they want to ignore what judges say, which once you get to that point, once you have a president who's just disregarding what judges say, you're in a totally lawless state.
So what you both do so well isn't just sort of analyzing what Donald Trump is doing, but you talk to voters on a regular basis who were swing voters who voted for Trump eventually in 2024. And Jonathan, you made the argument that many who voted for Trump this past election did so not in spite of authoritarianism or those tendencies, but because of it. Do you still stand by that? And do you think that any defiance of the judiciary or Congress will move the needles with those voters?
Yeah, I think that at least some large percentage of his voters this past time did it because of the authoritarianism. They heard what he was campaigning on. And they said, yeah, I want to go get me some of that. What made me really depressed over the last 55 days was the fact that his poll numbers really remained remarkably buoyant, given how he was governing. He was doing all the authoritarian stuff, and his polls weren't dropping. That started to change over the last 3 weeks or so. We've seen his standing deteriorate. And, one of the reasons I think he's moving so fast to have this showdown with the courts is because when you look just historically at these authoritarian attempts, at the end of the day, they are reliant upon some form of popular support. It becomes much, much easier for a guy who is like net +7 favorable to defy the courts than it is for somebody who's like net -13. And for looking from the other side of it, the courts are going to feel much more able to assert themselves if the president is unpopular. So I think the acceleration we've seen of him over the last 3 weeks or so has been precisely because his standing publicly is starting to deteriorate.
Let me share with you a little story. A while back, I used to host some charity soccer matches where you would get various celebrities, etc., playing soccer for charity. I remember there would be reality people from like Big Brother. And what was really strange about them, they were, with all due respect, just very everyday people looking for headlines, looking for scandal, because that's the notoriety that they kind of had evolved into after appearing on, one of them had been on Big Brother. The reason I bring that up is that the current president of the United States of America, one Donald J. Trump, clearly comes from let's call it a reality background. Forget the business. He knows all the tricks of how to get attention or distraction, how to get a headline. So that whole thing outside the White House with Elon Cybertrucks, etc., that was predetermined. He knew before the cars had even turned up what the results were going to be. Couldn't care less whether it's somebody saying it's a PR stunt. It was distraction. It was to put something out there that the attention was focused on that. Maybe not what was going on with regards to the economy, the Dow dropping, the situation with him promising on day one everything was going to be sorted out with regards to the Middle East and Russia.
You have to get them both in a room, and there are things you can say to each one of them, which I won't reveal now, which will guarantee that this war will end immediately.
On that to get it solved, I can do it in 24 hours. I know both players, and I can do that in 24 hours. But you can only do it from the office of the president. You need that. You need that seat. You need what's tailed in that seat, and I would have that done in 24 hours. It wouldn't even be tough. I know what to say to each of them, and there's no way they would reject it.
I will end that war in one day. It'll take 24 hours. I would have a deal done in 24 hours from the time we started. And I would tell Zelensky something, and I would tell Putin something, and I'd get him into a room, and I'd tell him again and again. I would have a deal done very quickly.
Hasn't happened. The Ukraine-Russian situation, we do not know, here we are Sunday, what's going to materialize this week. My point being is, when he had to go at MSNBC and CNN, once again, that was part of a predetermined situation to play a reality game, look for headlines, distraction, focus on that, the garbage he's saying, and not the real stuff.
We're doing very well right now, but we're doing well because I won the election. If I didn't win the election, you would have had a very bad period. I think a lot of the stock market going down was because of a really bad 4 years that we had. When you look at inflation and all of the other problems wars and inflation and so many other problems. But we're going to have very good years. If he gets in, you have the greatest depression in the history of this country. Your stocks will go to hell. Everyone thinks stocks, it's rich people. Everybody owns stocks. Your 401ks. Who has a 401k here? That's a lot of people. If Harris wins this election, the result will be a Kamala economic crash. When I win the election, we will immediately begin a brand new Trump economic boom. It'll be a boom. We're going to turn this country around so fast.
Oh, boy.
Okay, so, which one is it? It cannot...
So I understand MSNBC, their reaction today, but to me, they would have been better off totally ignoring it. Think of a circus and a clown. a clown performing to an empty audience doesn't work. A clown always needs someone to react. Now, I'm not saying we ignore what's going on, but surely the American cable news, I'm an outsider looking in, surely the setup should be one step ahead. Or is it just doing what CNN does? Chasing clicks.
Thing is a little unusual at the White House. They are making clear that they are not essentially ignoring the judge's order. They are drawing the distinction between that written order and the timing of it, as Caitlin was just talking about, versus a verbal order that the judge gave earlier. And in the White House briefing today, Caroline Leavitt said, verbal orders do not have as much weight. That we'll see what the judge says about that in the next hour. My guess is he will not agree with that. But look, the bottom line to all of this, politically speaking, the White House, the president, they believe they're on solid ground because he talked about this, he promised this, and this is exactly what he's doing. But the bigger question is this the case that will end up at the Supreme Court? Is this the executive authority case that will be tested ultimately or not? We shall see. But as of now, the White House is making clear, even though they don't like the order, they are saying that they are not ignoring it, which of course that would sort of open the door to a constitutional crisis, and that is not what they say is happening.
All right, Jeff Zeleny, Caitlin Polantz, thank you both very much for that reporting. And now our panel is here: former federal prosecutor Elliot Williams, CNN anchor, chief political correspondent Dana Bash, former Democratic Congressman Mondaire Jones, and former Republican Congressman Peter Meyer. Welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for being here today. Elliot, we got to start with you. Because you got to, this distinction that they are making between an oral instruction from the judge and the written order from the judge, is there actually any merit to this?
I have never seen an argument like that made. If a judge says you're guilty, if it's a bench trial, you're guilty right then, regardless of whether the judge memorializes it in writing. If the judge says, I hold you in contempt of court, if the judge says, I sentence you to 10 years in prison, all of those things have weight on the judge's words. Now, of course, a written ruling has, it explains things and so on, but I've never seen, and appeared in front of dozens of judges, clerked for 2 of them, when they say something, it has the weight of a ruling in court, full stop. So I'm curious to see what happens with this hearing and where they go at that point.
Yeah.